Yo guys, welcome back to the channel. Here are 5 VFX shots every editor should know about and learn in DaVinci Resolve. Let's waste no time and get straight to the point. Everything is made with timestamps so you can find exactly what you need. First is our matte painting effect for live action footage. Then we have our text effects. We can apply it to many different situations. And then we have our cutout transition. Then we're also going to learn how to do seamless transitions. And lastly, we have our invert color effect. Let's dive in. We have some footage here of 2 helicopters in flight, but let's say we want to add some mountains, distant mountains in the background. For that, we can use a technique called matte paintings. And we can enhance our shot and storytelling just by adding something in the background that looks realistic and real. So what I did for this shot is grab a still. You can go to File, then Export and current frame as still. And in my experience, using AI is the best method for this. I just made a prompt to remove the 2 helicopters from the shot and also make distant and realistic mountains in the background. And with Flux 2 Max, we have some really good results and we can tweak this a bit in post-production. I also made another generation to remove this foreground element, and then I upscaled the image for the final VFX shot. Back in DaVinci, I will open my footage in Fusion. You can go to Workspace, Layout Presets, and then use Midflow or just use the default workspace. Now the first thing I'm gonna add is a tracker to make sure the background moves along with the footage. So for that, I'm gonna use the planar tracker, and I'm just gonna select this bush area over here. Then in the operation mode, I will set it to track, set the reference time right here. Then for the tracker option, I will select hybrid point area, and motion type, we only need translation, rotation and scale. And then go ahead and track this forwards and also backwards. We can add our matte painting we just created and merge it over after the planar track. And let's also add an XF transform. And let's scale it down a bit so it fits the frame. Then with our planar track selected, we can create a planar transform. And this made a node tree for us with a bunch of keyframes to change that position. And the only thing we need to do here is hit Shift on the keyboard and drag it over after the transform. Now when I preview the footage, it will follow along with the tracker we made. But now we need to merge over our original footage again. So for that, I'm going to use a Luma keyer. And let's add our original footage onto the orange input of the Luma keyer. And then we can also merge this over. Select the Luma keyer and hit 2 on the keyboard to preview this. And I'm gonna invert the selection and clip the values this way. And just make sure we have a clean extraction of the helicopters and of our foreground. You can also add a little bit of blur, not too much. When you preview the merge, you can see we have our background mountains, and we should have a little bit more haze in the foreground here. So I will add a mask onto the mountains. I will use a rectangle mask and change the position and invert it. Now we can introduce some soft edge to this. So we have some haze. And I also want our original clouds. So I will add another rectangle mask and select subtract, add some soft edge, and then also add the mask right here. We can also add a CC color corrector. We can change the saturation, the contrast. I will also add a lens blur and add just a tiny bit of blur, not too much. And if you want to, you can also add some grain with your transform. Make sure it fits the frame all the way through. And now when I preview this, we have our distant mountains in the background, and it's all tracked with the footage. The next one is adding text elements on a moving object. So in this example, we have some footage of a jet taxiing on the runway, and we want to add some text onto this moving object and also place it behind the jet so we have some more depth. I use this effect all the time in my videos, and I think it's really helpful to show this one as well. And for this, I will also add a tracker, planar tracker, and now we can select this number because that's a good reference point for the track. And same as before, we're gonna set the reference time, choose hybrid point area, and also use translation, rotation, and scale. Then track it forwards and backwards. Then we can create a planar transform, and we can also add our text. I will use the text plus node and merge it over, and you can place some text, and then also shift and move this between the text and the merge. And I want this text to follow the perspective. We can cheat this a little bit by going to the transform options, and then in rotation Y, we can change that perspective. And we can also rotate the text. Now to add some more depth onto this, I will add a magic mask. But before we add our footage onto the magic mask, I found that it works better if you have a noise reduction node first, because some of the footage will have some digital noise and that will mess your magic mask up. So I will go to the noise reduction and change the threshold for the temporal and spatial, and then also add some blend. Then we can add this onto our magic mask, hit 2 to preview the magic mask, and let's place dots for the selection, and we can use the faster mode, that's fine, and track forwards and backwards. After that is done, we can go to the magic mask, clip the threshold values a little bit and add some blur, and then we can merge this over on top of our text. And now we have the text behind our airplane. And you can still tweak things as you want to. We can add an effect called scan lines, and let's change the color of the text first. And in your scan lines, we can change the frequency, and we can change the merge mode to screen. After the scan lines, we can also add a glow effect, increase the glow size and blend. And we can do a simple animation with the text. For example, the right on option, we can add a keyframe, then go to your keyframes, show only selected tools and scale it up. Then move forward in time and set the right on to 1. And because we made a magic mask onto the plane, we can also add a film effect just for the background. So I will add a film look creator and then add this over our footage. And let's decrease that exposure so we only see the highlighted plane. And we can customize the grain. So as soon as the text gets revealed, I will add a keyframe to the blending mode. Right here, it's at 0. And then as soon as the text pops up, we will go to 1. And select these keyframes, hit S to ease them. What I also like to do is going to the merge of the magic mask, add another mask to this, lips, and then add some soft edge so it blends in more. And that's it for the 2D effect. Now I will show you how to add 3D text within Fusion. Now for the 3D text, this is the footage we will work with. The idea I have for this is to add 3D text onto this wall and have the cars move in front of it. And the first thing I will add is a camera tracker. Use this one, camera tracker. And the first thing I will do is make a mask for these vehicles, because that will mess up your 3D track. So I will just create a basic mask, select your camera track, and then choose polygon mask. And I will create a mask just like this. And it's now at auto keyframing, so when we move forward in time, we can change the mask. And we can also add more points to this. And then it will change over time. Then select your camera tracker again. And in these different tabs, we can go to the option mode and use darken image. That way, when we go back to our track and preview the auto tracks, we can see our green dots. And this will be the tracks to 3D track the camera. But now it's inside of the mask we created. We need to invert that mask. And now when I preview this, it will be outside of the mask. It's kind of hard to see, that's why I used the darken image. But now we can go back to our detection threshold and change the sliders a bit so we have a bit more tracks. and also change the minimum feature separation. I will use bidirectional tracking because we will have accurate results with this, and it's going to track the footage forwards and backwards. So then go ahead and hit auto track. And the only thing we need to do now is solve this so we have a 3D scene. So go to your third tab and hit the solve button. And now it's tracked the whole scene. We get an average solve error of 1, which is not perfect, but we can go to the solve error and select the all option. Now we see how good all the tracks are. And when it turns red or orange, it usually means it's not a good track. So I will select all the red tracks just like this and just delete it. And move forward in your timeline and then delete the bad tracks. Once you've done that, we can hit solve again and you should have much better results. Just by doing that, we get the average solve error down to 0.6, and that's perfect for this scene. So now we can go to the export tab and hit export. Now it's created this snow tree for us. We can cancel out the footage and then merge it over like this. Then we can also add a text 3D node and add it to the merge. I will select the split view for this and then select the merge and hit 1 and then make sure the other merge is at 2 so we have this split view. Now with this text node selected, when we type something, we can preview the track and it's looking pretty good. And we can even see our 3D camera moving in 3D space. Now I want this text to be on this wall right here. And when you look at the 3D tracks, you can kind of make out what the 3D scene is. So for example, here we have all these tracking points and this will be the wall. So when I go to our text and change the position right over here and then rotate it, and now we have the text exactly on the position we want it to be. And that is just by looking at the point cloud and eyeballing it so it's in the correct position. I will also deselect our ground plane by hitting Ctrl P. So now it's not in the scene anymore. And to add this 3D effect, I will select our first viewer here and then go to the extrusion in the text node. And here we can change the extrusion depth. But as you can see, you don't really see the depth, and that's because we don't have light into our scene. So I will go back to the split view and add a directional light. And if you want the lights to be visible, we need to go to our renderer, so the camera tracker, and then go to the lighting and enable the lighting and shadows. When I preview the footage, the light should come from right over here. Go to our directional light and change that position so it roughly comes from the right place. And for the indirect light, I will add an ambient light. And this will make sure it's not too black in the shadows and there's some ambient light. You can also go to the extrusion and add some bevels so the text looks a little bit more smooth on the edges. You can also change the color. You can even add a glow and change the glow parameters. And now we have something like this, which is already pretty good. So let's go over to our original footage and add a magic mask. And just mask out this car. Then move this magic mask over here. And let's add it in front of our text. And then preview this merge. And now we can also tweak this magic mask, blur it out, and just clean up those edges. And there we go, now we have 3D text onto our footage and it blends in nicely because of this magic mask. Next is the cutout effect. That's also an effect I use all the time for my edits. and I'm gonna give you my personal touch on it. So first off, you need to have your shots already there. For example, here I have a close-up, then a wide shot. So the first thing I will do is overlay our footage on top of each other, like so. And this will be the point where the transition will start to take place. So I will cut this person out right at this point. So make a cut, then we can open it up in Fusion, and I will add a magic mask again and select the dancer. Then track forwards and backwards. We can also add a transform node, and right at this point I will make a keyframe for the center and I will move him to the left. So open up your keyframes and spline and only show the selected tools. And now at the end of the footage, I will slide it over to the left, like so. Then select both of your keyframes and hit S to smooth out those keyframes. And I want it to ease in a little bit more, so I will select the handle and stretch it out a bit more. And the same for the ending. So now we have something like this. And I will also add motion blur to this. So go to your transform, then go to settings, motion blur, and set it to 8. And I will also fix the edges a bit. So go to your matte and then select blur. Just make sure we have a clean edge. So at the beginning of the shot, I still want to have the original background. So I will go to the magic mask and select our blend mode. So we will start with the background, then we can hit the keyframe, and then as soon as the transition will take place, I will set it to 100. And we can also smooth out those keyframes. So now the background slides away and then he moves to the left. So for the shot underneath, I will animate this in as well. So I will select this and go to the Fusion page. And then I will add a transform to this. And I want the shot to come in from right to left. So let's hit a keyframe for the size and center. I will also go to the edges and change it to mirror. That way when we slide it over, it will mirror the edges. You can also change the pivot point so it starts on the right of the frame. And now we can adjust the size and the center. Then go a few frames forward and then reset it to the center. Now we have a quick transition like this, but I will make it much better by dialing in those keyframes. So selecting them, change the timing a bit so it's faster, and we can also tweak the handles. And also add some motion blur to this. Now after that you should have a result like this. It's already looking pretty smooth and really cool, but you can tweak this like crazy, add some overlay effects, sound design, you name it. You can do whatever you want with this, but that is the basic effect, and you can do it for the next shot as well, and just keep adding layers to this same basic effect. If you want to transform your edits even more and want to learn some 3D and visual effects, I highly recommend checking out the VFX Room. It's a community full of creatives that want to push themselves and really get to those higher levels of opportunities. In there you will learn DaVinci Resolve from scratch, from all the way from beginner to advanced, and if that's something you are interested in, check it out. The next VFX shot is a seamless transition. That is something we see a lot on social media. Those videos go crazy viral, and it's actually not so hard to make. The only thing is, it takes a lot of time to tweak it to perfection and really make it seamless. Alright, for this transition I had the idea of just showing a random video of a guitar, then zooming into the strings, and then we go over to the next shot, to this railroad track. And the first thing I'll do is select a portion of the clip where the transition will take place. For example, right here, we will make a cut, and then we will move over to Fusion. First thing I will add is a planar track. And I will select those two strings on the footage, set the reference time, set it to hybrid point area, And then translation, rotation, and scale. Then track to end. And track backwards. And then in the operation mode, we can set it to stabilize. So the clip is stabilized. Compute stabilization. And we don't want the scale actually. So let's deselect the scale and compute stabilization again. And we can go to frame mode, zoom, and hit auto zoom. And we can adjust the scale where needed. And we can also add a transform after this and keyframe the size and center. We will adjust the center and size so it's right in the middle of the frame. There we go. And let's adjust the keyframe so it starts at about frame 25 and smooth out the keyframes. And at the beginning of the planar track, make sure the scale is set at 1. There we go. Notice that we have this hard cut right now. And that's because it goes from no stabilization to stabilization. And one fix I found is just by adding this smooth cut effect. So place it between the two clips and then just like magic, it will blend the pixels together and then create a smooth transition. Notice that we still have those black edges. I will fix this later. Let's first focus on the transition. I will make a compound clip from this, rename it guitar, and then we can take our FPV drone shot. So let's overlay this and change the opacity just so we can see the timing of everything. And this looks pretty good. Now I will take both of these clips and alt drag it. So now we duplicated the footage. Let's right click and select new Fusion clip. Then open this up in Fusion. And here we have the guitar clip and the drone shots. I will first add a transform onto the guitar and then animate it with some keyframes so it's right in the center. So add a size keyframe and center and adjust the timing slightly. And then we can size it up just like this and keep it right in the center. Then you should have something like this. It zooms in. Now we can go to our drone shot and set the blend mode to 0.5. And I will add a perspective positioner. So now we can change the perspective of that track. It's a bit tricky to do this, but just make sure it's a straight line all the way through. And I will also add a transform to this. I'm just trying to make sure I line up the two tracks with our lines we see here. Right, the perspective looks good. Now let's set a keyframe for the top left, top right, bottom left and bottom right of our perspective, and also our size and center. And then at the end of the transition, we can set the size to 1 and set everything at the original size. And let's set our perspective positioner on the corners of the footage. Just this one here, this one here, and this one here. I will set the blend to 1 again on the merge, and then we should have an effect like this. It changes perspective and goes to the original. And that's exactly what we want for this transition to work. Now set the blending mode to 0.5 again so we can see what's happening. And now when I keyframe our blending mode, for example, if we set it to 0 and then go forward in time and then we set it to 1, then we have a simple blend transition like this, which already works because the perspective and everything matches. But we can fine-tune this a bit more so it's seamless. For example, we can add a luma keyer node to slowly reveal the train tracks. So select your original drone shot from the transform, place it in the orange input, and then merge it over our node tree. Then hit 2 on the keyboard to preview our luma keyer. And let's clip those values so we only see the white train tracks. And I will set a keyframe for the low and high slider. And then slowly reveal it like this. And in the merge itself, I will set the blend to 0 at the start. and then to 1, so it slowly comes into frame. And this is the final transition. Considering the amount of time, it's pretty good. It can be a bit more seamless, but I'm pretty happy with this. As a bonus, here is another seamless transition I made, but this time using AI to help us out. For this shot, I had this 360 perspective, and then I zoomed into the planes. And here we are in the next shot, which is the close-up shot of these formation planes. So basically how I did it, I zoomed into the 360 shot, and then made a still frame from this. We have our second shot, which is this one. I also made a still frame from this. Then I went to VVAI with a start and end frame. The start frame is our 360 shot, ending frame is our zoomed in shot. And then with a simple prompt and the Kling tree model, we made a perfect seamless transition from one shot to the next. Then we also upscaled this with Topaz Video Upscaler, and then simply placed it between the two clips and speed remapped it a bit. And then with the adjustment clip, I added an extra transform zoom effect. And then you basically have a seamless shot like this. It's a simple effect, but you can use it for many projects, and it really makes your work stand out. Another effect I use all the time is called the Invert Color effect. And this effect is very subtle, but I think it gives a nice touch to your edits. There's two ways I use this effect. One is in DaVinci Resolve itself, and one is in the Fusion page. And I will use this effect to transition from this footage onto this footage. And for this, I will use an adjustment clip. So go to your effects and then choose adjustment clip and drag it over your timeline. And the effect is called Invert. Make sure you select all folders and select Invert Color. And this inverts the color for a split second, but there's not much more control than this. So let's go to the video option. And here we have also a composite mode. And in the composite mode, we can choose difference or any other mode you would like. I found that choosing difference gives you a cool effect like this. And we can even tweak the opacity just a tiny bit. And that's one way you can add this effect. The second way is the best way in my opinion. So for this I will undo this effect and change the opacity again. And with this adjustment clip selected, I will go to Fusion. And here, same thing, I will use an invert color, but this time I will also use an effect called false color. And any video camera has this option. It's a false color effect, so you can see the different levels of your footage. But for this, we're gonna use this effect mainly to create an invert effect. You have a bunch of options, but the thing I will change is the plugin mode. I will set this to creative, and then we can create our own look. I will also scroll down and not show the values and scale, because we only want this overlay effect. When I change the number of bands, we can change the color, sort of like a preset, and then tweak the values. Let's change this color to white. And then in the pre-processing, I will select the black level and turn it up a bit and just play around with these settings until you have a look that looks like this. You can customize this based on your project or footage you're working on. Now I really like this color preset, and let's go back to our edit page and just move it on top of the footage. And let's turn it off and on. So hit Alt to duplicate this. And let's just flicker it on and off. And I also have an overlay element with some grain. This is before, this is after, and it just adds a bit more texture and life to it. One thing you can also add is a prism blur. So you have this RGB kind of effect and a radial blur to blur out those edges, and a radial kind of effect. And now this looks a bit more refined, and customized. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you want to learn more tricks like this, check out the VFX Room for all sorts of goodness, and see you on the next one.